Welcome back, everybody, to the sSEC Weekly Show. I'm your host, Ezeco, and if you found this video and you're a little bit confused on what might be going on, this is not real college basketball. It's not real college football. It's not the real SEC. This is Simulation Football Association starting up college basketball as well. We're a simulated sports. Check out the description. It'll give you a whole lot better descriptions than I can give you. There's links in there. There's a Discord you can hop into, ask some questions. If you're interested in simulated sports, kind of like fantasy football, but better, it's a lot of fun. It's really exciting. College football is the main one. Of course, it's called simulation football, but that's winding down now. Bowl season's in full swing. College football playoffs start off this weekend, and now it's time for college basketball. In both times, college basketball is starting up in real world. It's also starting up here. It's going to be starting soon. Be here before you know it. There's tons of teams. We have 172 teams in our Division I college basketball, so there's tons of openings for your favorite team or a team you might even just be really interested in. If your team may not be doing great this season, then come check out maybe taking over a team in the simulation. Maybe you could do a lot better. But let's take our final part. This is part 3 of the SEC preseason basketball preview. We've taken up everybody else. We're on our final 3 teams and then some cleanup. Check out those first 2 parts so you don't get super confused on some other things. But let's look at our first of our final teams, Tennessee Volunteers. And I do this not because I am a Kentucky fan and a Kentucky coach, but because Tennessee is bad. Tennessee is not a good team. They have some more A values than other teams in the conference. So I think I ended up rating them a little bit higher than I did initially. But Tennessee, they're just, as a whole, as an entire team, they're not very good. And you could see that with those 3 right in the middle. I'm going to try and avoid saying names and calling out guys who are really just bad. But there's 4 guys right in the middle of this chart who are just bad. And when you're looking at this team and trying to find talent to put them over the edge, to make them a good team, you don't find much. Terry Baker is a really good talent who's an elite shooter. He can shoot anywhere, but he's bad at defense. Benjamin Price is an elite level defender who can score underneath the basket, but he can't do much else. Refugio Dent is a good scorer, and he's not terrible everywhere else. He's a 5'8" guy, so he can't play defense. He can play 40 minutes on the court, but he can't play defense. But I don't want him playing defense at 5'8". So I actually think he's probably undervalued at being a C value and a 1-star recruit coming out of high school. I mean, a guy can shoot, right? And at the end of the day, the way to win basketball is shoot. So Harris Blunt is also a really good player, 6'3", but he can't defend. So that's tough. That's a tough position to be in. And when you look at Tennessee, they cannot defend. I have said other teams are below average. Tennessee is a bad defensive team. They've got a couple guys who can defend. Price, Courts, and Jeffrey are all great defenders. Everybody else is terrible. You cannot defend with just 3 guys, especially if what the other team's just going to do is just dip it to somebody else real quick, and they'll just go through them. Tennessee's a bad defensive team. They're not a great rebounding team either. They're definitely better rebounding than they are defense, but it's not a whole lot to hang your hat on there. Ball work, Tennessee's going to make a lot of mistakes. You've got some guys who are really good, really smart, but they're going to lose that ball. They're going to have shot clock violations. They're going to lose the ball out of bounds. They're going to make offensive foul mistakes. Then scoring, I mean, where are they going to score? They arguably are best underneath the basket, but that's not saying much. You've got some guys who can score, but really not much. I mean, it's tough to look at this roster because they're just so underwhelming. And then I'm not going to say it too many more times. Tennessee's not very good. So, and then when you look at their out of conference schedule, they got to take on Xavier. They have to take on South Dakota State. Then they got to take on Wichita State. Then Baylor. And then their Big 12 challenge is Texas. And Texas is pretty good. I think Texas is the 4th or 5th best team in the Big 12. And while that may be halfway down the Big 12 is a really good conference. So they're going to get smoked out of conference, and then they're going to come into the SEC, and they're going to get smoked in conference. So Tennessee's missing the tournament. They're not making the NIT. They're not making the NCAA. Tennessee's going to play their 28 games. They're going to recruit all season, try and do a little bit better next season, but there's not much for them to look at next season either. This is a long rebuild project for anybody. Sweezy, I'm sorry. This is a long rebuild project for any coach. Tennessee's not going to be good this year. They're not going to be good next year. And I don't think they're going to be good the season after. It's going to be 3 seasons before Tennessee's looking at the top half of the SEC conference. And that's going to be a struggle. They're going to have to hit home runs on the recruiting this season and next for that to happen. So let's move on from Tennessee because that's just so unfortunate to keep watching. And we're going to check in with Texas A&M, which is not much better. I mean, they're better, obviously, but I'm not crazy about them. Defensively, they're below average. You've got some elite level defenders, but it's a below average team defensively. Rebounding is about the same, below average. I'm just not impressed with Texas A&M anywhere on the court. While they do have a full mix of mostly 3 stars, a couple 2-star guys and 1-star guys there, I just don't see where Texas A&M can be successful. They're pretty good underneath the basket. You've got some elite level scorers there, but the rest of the team's pretty average, right? 3-point scoring is actually average. I mean, they can mix it up a little bit more than others, but that's just because they're not a great to elite level scoring anywhere else. 2-point, they're about the same. Anywhere Texas A&M tries to score, they're good to average. Not great and definitely not elite, but they're good. Like, everywhere is a good option because nowhere else is a better option, if we're going to say that about Texas A&M. And then when you try to find a star on this team, you're just not seeing it. Adrian Costales is a great shooter who starts to suffer underneath the basket and is a terrible defender. And then Madavi Den is a great defender and rebounder, but not a great shooter. So I don't see anything awesome about Texas A&M to really just make me excited to watch them play, to talk about them, to have a positive outlook on. I just don't have a positive outlook on them because I don't see where they're going to be good. And then if we look at their out of conference schedule, they got to go to Texas and play them, which is not going to be fun for them. TCU, they're also playing, so they're playing 2 Texas teams plus Texas Tech and North Texas, which are nothing games. But TCU is going to be a tough game. And then they got to play Army, who is a top 25 team. Army's really good. Don't let it get twisted that it's Army. Army's really good. Texas Tech playing twice somehow. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's actually going to happen. But Texas A&M's got a tough out of conference schedule. I think they'll go 500 and out of conference. I don't think they'll do much better in the SEC. I think they're going to miss the tournament. They might squeeze into the NIT, but I'm not holding my breath on the Aggies to do very much in the postseason. Checking in with our last team is the Vanderbilt Commodores, which is not going to be too much more exciting. We have Derek Wendell, who's a great guard. He's a 4-star guy who's going to turn some heads on some NBA draft boards and possibly could sneak in that second round. In fact, I kind of would be surprised if he doesn't get drafted or at least an undrafted free agent. Derek Wendell's a really good player. He's really somebody you can rely on. If you had to say anything bad about his game, it's rebounding, which, I mean, you got other guys who can rebound, right? He's a good defender too. He can score from anywhere he wants. So that's what's promising. But what's the problem for Vanderbilt is that's about all they've got. Kenneth Stewart's a really good shooter who can fill it up from 3-point and is decent at. He's a good 2-point shooter, but he's terrible at defense and he's terrible rebounder. So it's that same mixed bag that we've been seeing all over the place in the SEC. Vanderbilt is a very, very average defensive team. They have a guy on there who's a D, which I'm not super concerned about, but everywhere else is B's and C's. It's a very average defensive team. Rebounding wise, it's about the same. You've got some guys who are A's, but then they're pulled down by some guys who are D's. So average to above average rebounding. And then ball work, I mean, it's Vanderbilt, right? They pull guys who have really high SAT and ACT scores. They're not going to be making too many mistakes. There are going to be some guys who make mistakes. But Vanderbilt is going to be a smart team with the ball. Underneath the basket is where Vanderbilt will have success. They are a dangerous and very good underneath the basket scoring team. What makes them a downfall is they can't score anywhere else. You've got some guys who can score. I mean, Wendell can score, Stewart can score, but nobody else can score anywhere else except for underneath the basket. And if you cannot mix it up, you're going to have trouble. So it's not a lot promising for the Commodores. I think they'll be one of the better bad teams, but they're still not going to be great. Out of conference is going to be tough as well. Western Michigan's going to have a pretty good season. That's a team who made it to the NIT final in 2020, if I remember correctly, so they're going to be pretty good. They got to go face Villanova, who's not anything to sneeze at. And they are going to miss the Big 12 challenge, which is fortunate for them. But then they play Duke, who I honestly, I cannot recall anything about my ACC preview from Duke, which might mean that Duke is not very good. So, and somehow they're playing Duke twice. Somebody did terrible at the scheduling if there's a lot of teams playing the same team twice. But the point is that Vanderbilt has a favorable out-of-conference schedule, but I don't think they'll be able to pull it off because they may not be better than any of these teams. While I look at that and I say, yeah, none of those teams are very good. Neither is Vanderbilt. So those teams are probably better than them. So that's a tough out-of-conference schedule for Vanderbilt, for them to then come into the SEC and be one of the lower half teams. So I think that Vanderbilt is going to miss the NCAA tournament. I think they'll also miss the NIT, and they'll just have that 28-game season. It'll be tough for them, and then the next couple years are going to be rough. It's going to be just as bad as Tennessee. They don't have a whole lot of promise in their underclassmen to do much next season. So maybe they can recruit, but without a human coach, it's going to be very, very tough. Vanderbilt will continue to be at the bottom of the SEC, I think, for the years to come in both football and basketball. So that is all of our SEC teams. We've previewed all of them. We've previewed all 14 of them. If you've sat there and listened to me shit talk your team for the last hour and a half worth of video, congratulations to you. That's it. But there's still a few more things. Let's look a little bit at what I think is going to be the final finish for the SEC. Obviously, this is going to be rough. It's going to be tough. But this is how I think everything pans out. We talk about, I think Missouri is the best team in the conference. I think Kentucky and South Carolina are 2A and 2B. I've got Kentucky finishing 2 and South Carolina finishing 3, but those could just as easily flop. And neither team should be disappointed by finishing 2 or 3 to each other. Georgia will be very good because of Swinson, so I think they'll finish 4. Ole Miss has got some promise there as well. They're going to finish 5th, I think. And then LSU will be pulling up 6. And then those are the teams that I think are going to make the NCAA tournament. You could see some other teams squeak into the NIT, or maybe even LSU or Ole Miss fall down to the NIT. But I think the SEC has 6 teams that have a good shot at the NCAA tournament, which you kind of want that to be more. We want more than half the teams probably making the NCAA tournament, but it's a good start for a conference who's not known for their basketball, for the rosters that we just went over, for how rough a lot of them are, especially in the lower half. 6 teams in the NCAA tournament field of 64 will be a good start. Mississippi State pulling up 7th. Florida will be pulling up 8th. Alabama, I think, will be 9. Arkansas will finish below them at 10, and then Auburn at 11, and then Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Tennessee pulling up your 12, 13, 14. Those teams are just really bad. Well, it was unfortunate we had to preview them for our part 3 to just finish off with the 3 worst teams in the conference, but they're just bad. In fact, that whole right side of this graphic, I think, is not very good. The left half is markedly better than the right half. And in fact, that gulf between the graph might as well just be the gulf between the top half and the bottom half. But this is what I think will happen. Obviously, this is not going to be what happens. There will be some mix-up in there. But I think what you can probably rely on is the 6 blue balls of NCAA tournament there. Pun intended. So, Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina, probably locks for the tournament. The other 3 are bubble teams. Mississippi State might even sneak in and surprise me. But, this is where we're at. So, checking out a couple award watching. We talked about these guys, right? We talked about Schroeder. We talked about Swinson. We talked a little bit about Woodard. I kind of skimmed over Woodard because we didn't spend too much time on LSU because they weren't as good as some of the other teams. But these are your 4 guys on the John Wooden National Player of the Year shortlist for the preseason. Schroeder, Swinson, Woodard, and Philby. All awesome players among the current top 25 players in the country, just based off pure expectations. Schroeder and Swinson are contenders for Big Man of the Year. These are these other 3 are 10-man shortlists, so they're already on the preseason 10-man shortlist for Big Man of the Year. No surprise there. Daryl Scott's on the 10-man shortlist for Freshman of the Year. And then William Woodard, Philby, and Derek Wendell for Vanderbilt are all on the Guard of the Year 10-man shortlist for the preseason. If I had to put money on anything, it would be for Schroeder and or Swinson to be Player of the Year, Big Man of the Year. If they don't split the award, one of them's carrying both. If I had to put any money that meant a significant amount to me, it would be on one of those 2 to be taking home that trophy at the end of the year. Even with how much there are some really good players out there in the country and some much better teams and teams in the SEC in the country, those 2 are guys you can rely on to absolutely pop some eyeballs out of some heads. That takes care of the award watch. We'll have a few awards. I think the SEC will take home some trophies. Not too much hardware. I don't think we're going to see any teams take home in the NCAA championship, much as I'd like to. I just don't see the talent there in the SEC this year. So the best we can do is some individual awards this season, I think. But as we get closer to that, as we get ready for all of that, this is what the opening night slate is. There are 2 games a week. This is the first set of games. There are some interesting matchups with Alabama, Temple. All right, cool. Arkansas, Iowa, Auburn hosting number 24 TCU. And in fact, real quick, of the 14 teams in the SEC, 12 of them are opening up at home. The only two teams that are not opening up at home are Tennessee and Texas A&M. Tennessee's going up to Xavier. Not a long trip, but it is a difficult trip because Xavier is going to be pretty decent. And then Texas A&M going all the way up to Northern Illinois, which will be an interesting matchup. I think Texas A&M is just bad enough for that to be a close game and interesting, even though Northern Illinois probably isn't one of the top teams in the country. Other interesting marquee matchups there. Georgia taking on our preseason number 16 Georgia Southern. That'll be a good game, a really good and important game to watch. Auburn hosting number 24 TCU. That'll be a good one. I think TCU is going to be pretty good, and I don't think Auburn is going to be very good. So if you want to see how lopsided it could get, that might be one to watch. Number 19, Kentucky is hosting Western Kentucky. That should be a good game to watch. Mississippi State is going to take on number 2 Utah as the first game of the season. That one's going to get ugly. That one could get ugly, and it could get ugly fast. Number 15, Missouri taking on Georgia State. And number 23, South Carolina hosting North Carolina. Go ahead and get a rivalry game out of the way early. Why not? First game of the season. Let's go ahead and throw some blood on the court, right? It's not like they hate each other that badly. That's going to be bad. They're going to hate each other. I don't know how good North Carolina is going to be, but I do know that South Carolina is going to be pretty good. So I expect South Carolina to win, especially with the home court advantage, but could be a surprise. Don't know. And that's your opening night. So it will be fun to watch. It will be interesting to watch. The entire season is going to be interesting and fun to watch. So I hope you guys will be able to join us. I can't wait for it to start. I know some of you can't wait for it to start. I'm really excited. If you have made it this far and you're not already in, then you might as well just go ahead and jump down to the links, check out the description, come check us out in Discord, talk to us. It's a lot of fun. If you made it this almost 2 hours of 3 parts previewing this and you haven't joined, then you're just crazy. Join it. Check it out. I'll see you guys over there. Good luck with your bowl games. Good luck with your college basketball seasons as they come up. I'll see you guys out there.